So we're talking about today lessons on the job, climbing the ladder, balancing our personal and professional lives, and some of the tougher questions on your perspective on diversity and inclusion. But I'm going to come and sit down with you here so we can have more of a casual conversation together. So can you share some of your insights about your professional path, and now looking back, what were some of the critical moments that have helped define where you are today?
Well, I'll start.
Sure.
So I came to this country 30 years ago to do a master in computer science. And I actually didn't speak any English. Actually, I was very good in math, but not in English. And I stopped actually in LA to study English. My English was not good enough. So my scholarship was denied after. So I basically told the university, at the time, 30 years ago, we didn't have some of the issues that we have today. And I said, I need to study. I don't have money. I will code your system for keeping all the records because it's not good. And believe it or not, they accepted my offer. So I was able to study for free through my work and the University of Cal State LA to then later on do a master in computer science. So that was a defining moment for me and my career. And then later on, I was able to start in Symantec Corporation and become a lead in many companies, Hewlett Packard, Yahoo, and most recently 8 years in Microsoft.
Fantastic. Thank you.
So I am originally from Venezuela, and I went to college there. I started working in the financial industry in Venezuela. I worked for Banco Provincial and Banco Mercantil. And via LOCO, like a Venezuelan student loan, I was able to come to the US to do my master's degree. And I was hired by Bank of America, 21 years ago, into a rotational program where I was positive I was going to go back to Venezuela, where Bank of America had a branch with a trading floor, security vault, you name it. And then the elections in 1998 came, and the government changed, It was when Hugo Chavez won the presidency. And I think that not just Bank of America, but probably many corporations changed their plans about the country. And that's how I stay in the US. So I moved my plans and relocated from San Francisco in California to Miami, and became at some point the head of financial institutions risk management for Latin America and Canada. And you ask about pivotal moments, in the career. So after the merger with Merrill Lynch and Bank of America, there was a decision that impacted people but had nothing to do with the people. It was to move teams from certain places to other places, and my entire team was relocated to New York, and my position was basically eliminated. So I was ready to get the phone call from HR to tell me, here's your package, and this is how it's going to happen. When some executive from the bank who had heard about me and worked with me and my team in other things told me, hey, we're looking for a COO for Latin America, the region which we're now creating, and I think that you can do this. And I accepted, even though it was an 180-degree turn. I never thought about leaving a career in risk, which I had for almost 15 or plus years. And that was a pivotal moment for me, because it was basically to take a risk in something that I had no idea what to do and how to do. It was a brand new position. I was not even going to replace anybody. And it turned out to be one of the best things that could have happened to me. So I guess the bottom line is go for it, Take the risk. It's okay to do different things.
Well, differently, my family is from Monterrey, Mexico. Monterrey. Both my grandmother and my grandfather from Monterrey. My mother and father are also from Mexico, and they came to the United States when they were very little. And so I'm the first generation here in the United States, and they changed everything in their world so that I could have a better life, like many of you who are in here. So there was a lot of pressure growing up, mainly because we were struggling. I came from very humble beginnings. I was born in Detroit, Southwest Detroit, which is the Hispanic community in Detroit. And when I was growing up, it wasn't a question on if I was going to go to college, it's where was I going to go to college. And early on, living in Detroit, you know that the big three, the automotive companies and the suppliers, are a really big deal. And there wasn't anybody in my family that was connected to anybody that could help me get a job. So I knew that I had to hustle, and I had to figure out, who do I need to talk to? How do I need to do this? And early in my career, I was able to, back in the day when we had newspapers, I looked at the newspaper and I found a position that actually was for a subsidiary for one of the automotive companies. And then I was able to, through that opportunity, find a contract position with the same company, and eventually get hired on. And I knew that in some cases we only get one shot. And I came in early, I stayed late, I worked weekends, anything that I could do so that I might be able to impress whoever it took. And right there and then, I didn't know who it was that I needed to impress. Early in my career, I didn't know about mentoring. I didn't know about a lot of the things that I know today. And because of that, I'm set to change some of the experiences that some of our younger folks have. And through perseverance, through crazy hard work, and through finding people who were in my corner, I was able to climb slowly but surely. And at some pivotal moments when I really had to negotiate, or I really needed to be strategic, those were the opportunities that were given to me where I was able to really make some headway in my career. And it was at those times when they were challenging or pivotal when I really made my mark. And when I was about 27, I was put in a situation similar to what we just heard with these other ladies, where either I could have stayed or I could have gone. And I had just finished my bachelor's, and there was a position for a full-time job in my company, in my group. And one of the directors at a team meeting passed a job description around the room. And I noticed that they didn't even consider me. And there I thought, well, they may still consider me as the intern, or maybe they just don't consider me at all. And one of the things that we have to learn, and many of you have either learned it or will learn, is that we really are in charge of our own career. And it wasn't up to HR, and it wasn't that someone was gonna tap me on the shoulder and say, you know what, Monica, we think you're ready, we should do this. I literally had to find that courage within me. And after the meeting, I went back to my desk and I set up a meeting with HR. And I took all of the bullets that the job description had, and then I wrote next to them all of my qualifications. And I went into HR and I said 3 things. First and foremost, you've told me that you consider me as part of the future of this company. Is that correct? They said yes. You told me that if I wasn't working for X manager today, that this other manager would take me. Yes. You've said that everyone raves about my work and that I'm really on my way. Yes. Well, then why wouldn't somebody consider me? She said, well, we'll look into that and we'll see what we might be able to do. Had I not said something, as nervous as I was, that wouldn't have made my life any different. I would have just gone, taken my anger, eaten it, and nothing would have happened. That was one of the first pivotal moments where my life changed. My salary grew drastically, and I ended up getting a company car. And at the time, I was one of the youngest people in that company to get a company car. And that would not have happened had I not stood up for myself. And I think that is what we're going to be hearing a little bit more about today is us being able to have the courage. And in some cases, we meet people who are the wind beneath our wings, but it's negotiating for yourself. It's sticking up for yourself. It's finding people who will be that voice that speak about you positively when you're not in the room. And so I think the early wins are also really important so that by the time you reach a certain age, you're really on your way. And for many of you, especially the YHCAers in the room, congratulations on being identified as high potentials. You're going to meet some great people here, and obviously there's people here that can really help you.
Thank you so much for those insights. It's amazing. And I think all three of you have really already answered my next question, which was, how have you shown up? And you have shown up in so many ways in your journeys. So thank you for sharing those. And also facing adversity. You've each faced adversity, and maybe you can each share with us some of how you define what might be a project challenge versus maybe a microaggression. How do you navigate that? Because I'm sure you've each encountered that along the way.
Yeah, so I would say, if specifically, many years ago, I was in a company, and I was the only one, not only female, but also Latina. And the company was the majority one culture. And the meetings, how they were conducting the meetings, they gave me a project, but I started observing that it was not just a challenging project, it was a project that it was very unique, and everybody kind of knew about it, but I didn't. So I detected that was a macroaggression, and I actually had the courage in the middle of the meeting to tell the CEO and said, you are putting me to fail in this project, and I'm not going to accept this, and I'm quitting at this moment. And I walk out of the company because I couldn't stand not only the microaggression, but being set up deliberately for failure. So that was a very extreme, but I had to stand for and show the company that I would not accept that.
And Anna, finance is also a very male-dominated industry. So, how have you found yourself navigating through different scenarios?
Yeah, I have an interesting anecdote to tell. This was during the financial crisis. We went, and I was in risk management at that time, right? We went from being I would not say aggressive, but relatively open-minded, right, with the type of transactions that we might consider to being very conservative, right? And me being managing Latin America, there's so many things that go on in our countries, right? So you have Brazil with one crisis at one time, and then Mexico with the political situations, and then in Peru something else happening. So there was this head of corporate banking, right? And I was dealing also with the trading desk, and I had the traders calling me. They wanted to do certain transactions that were okay in the past, but given the environment in which we were living, right, during the financial crisis, they were not acceptable because we were taking high risk with relatively small size companies, so they were a no. And it seems that, and I made my decision, right? The decision was, no, we're not gonna do this deal. So I received this call from this very senior corporate banker from our office in Brazil. And I remember I got the call from home, and he said, listen, I'm gonna organize a call so you can apologize to the head of the trading desk because you didn't approve that transaction. And that transaction cost the bank not to win X in fees. And immediately, right, I felt this like fire burning inside and said, I'm not gonna apologize for doing my job, and if you don't like my decision, escalate it, period, end of the conversation. And I believe that if I would have been a male, the reaction might have been different. I don't know, I have that feeling, right? Because the reality is that my other colleagues didn't experience things like that. I guess long story short, there was no second thoughts or escalation. Nobody came back to me and said why you didn't approve the transaction. And I think it's a cultural issue that is now evolving. I think that this happened 10 years ago, right? We are 10 years into the financial crisis. Today, I see the working environment very different. We have so many females in leadership positions. We are, I think, opening the doors and the windows for the new generations to come to be considered equal. So my experience is like, never take it personal, right? It's the facts. The fact is that this is the policy, I'm following the policy, I made a decision based on these factors, and if you don't like it, it's not personal. Go and escalate it. But never apologizing for doing my job, I guess. Yeah.
I want to ask, obviously we're all hearing that you've each had this very strong inner voice and a strong inner drive. And I'd love to get some insights for our audience here as well about the career advice that you received, or maybe some general advice that you've picked up along the way that was very meaningful to you and helped guide you to be the people you are today. And maybe, Monica, you can speak to this first.
Sure, but let me just comment. It's the Latina feistiness. That's the passion that you see, and for those of you who are married to a Latina, for sure. So in terms of advice, there's a whole bunch of advice out there. One nugget that I received a long time ago, and it's really true, is your manager matters. Who your boss is matters. They have the ability to make sure that your career skyrockets. They have the ability to stall your career. They have the ability to see you out the door. And sometimes we don't always pick our bosses. Sometimes we inherit them. But understanding their management style and their leadership is very key. Because if you're working really hard and they're advocating for you, there's nothing more powerful. Certainly there's other key factors, but I think one big one is the person that you're working for. So if you make them look good, time and time again, they will help you navigate, and they will make you look good.
Thank you. We've been talking a lot over this whole morning about this ever-evolving, diverse base of employees, that growing demographic, and thankfully so. And so what do you see as the competitive advantage day in and day out? How do you see diversity and inclusion play an active role in what you do daily?
So in the case of Microsoft, Diana introduced the session, and she mentioned about that we empower every individual in the world to do more. So we also know about research that indicates that when diverse teams are more innovative, more creative, and they're able to create products and services that serve everyone. So in that case, we live it. We are, trying to recruit more diverse talents. We have ways to go to trying to bring more pipeline as far as Latinos is concerned, and other minority groups. We try to foster and retain them, grow them. But more importantly is growing a culture of inclusion in the company, which we're trying to do now with our core priority, and able to everybody learning or activating and having more accountability on how we develop inclusion. So we are feeling it every day, and we actually are building technology to empower everyone.
If I may add, I think it's the right thing to do, right? To have diversity, because we live in a diverse world, and you want everybody to be representative, but not only that, you also want everybody to be comfortable at work with what that person is, right? So if I have an accent, I want to make sure I'm comfortable. Or if you want to come out as an LBTG, you want to make sure you can bring your entire self to work. But then you need to think about who's your audience, right? Who are your clients? So there was this firm that was basically pitching, it's a consulting firm that was pitching to these big corporate clients, and the pitching style of for the transactions, right, was exactly the same for years, and it was extremely successful until it wasn't. And they noticed that in the past, the clients were mostly males, or at least their audience, right? But now they have more like a mixed audience, so the clients had more senior women, and they realized that the way they communicate the pitches for the RFPs is not the same for male than what you do it for a female. There are different things that maybe make us click that are not necessarily the same things that may click the men. So just to think about being a efficient company serving your general public, like women is, we're 51% of the population. And then you have all the minorities that are now becoming stronger in terms of purchasing power, making purchasing decisions, investment decisions. If you look at the history, it was, I think, not too long ago, maybe 50 years ago or so, that a woman needed permission for the husband to open a checking account. And right now, today, almost like my husband asked me permission to use a checking account, right? Like we're equals now. So we have power, and companies need to understand that they're understanding that, right? That we want to make sure that whoever is making the decision, designing the products, or speaking on behalf of the companies represent the clients, right? The customers, the ones that are going to buy your product.
And Anna, we were speaking earlier a little bit about supplier diversity. Do you want to add anything about that as well?
Yes, so I met today in the conference a colleague of Bank of America that is basically in the procurement, so hi there, and she's responsible for making sure that within our procurement process, we have diversity. So we want to employ people from the community, and we want to make sure that we have a good representation of the community. So if we're in a Hispanic Latino community, we want to hire Hispanics, we want to hire women. And I think that, yes, we're doing that because we have to as part of certain regulations that we need to obey to. But after we started doing it, the bank and the senior leadership and our CEO has realized that it's not just what we need to do mandatory, it's the right thing to do. It's actually very productive. It's actually excellent for business because our suppliers also are a client, and that creates a relationship as opposed to a one-time transaction that can last years. And in the financial industries now, we're basically, checking account, mobile banking could be a commodity. The type of loyalty that you create by establishing a relationship, that is where there's value, right? So it's very important that we include diversity in all the processes, not just hiring, but also procurement, right? To have suppliers that are diverse.
Critically important, and especially given some of the commentary that Sid made about our purchasing power in general and how it's growing. That these are critical decisions that corporations have to really make in order to move the needle for our communities and for our entrepreneurs that are out there. So I guess I would love to ask Monica then, you were talking a lot about your journey and some of these challenging moments and how you address them. What would you tell your entry-level executive self?
Well, I said it earlier, it took me a minute before I figured out the power of mentoring. So I would tell myself, get 2 mentors, hopefully somebody within your organization, and then maybe someone outside of your organization so you can gain some additional perspective. I would also tell my young executive self that it's important to have a sponsor. And back when I first started my career, sponsor, that word was not something that was on the top of everyone's list. And I was watching the tweets from this weekend that were happening here at HACR, and I think someone summarized quite nicely that a mentor is someone who coaches you, who speaks to you, but a sponsor is someone who speaks about you. And that is so true. Your sponsor is someone within your organization that speaks about you favorably when they're all in that meeting and they're talking about your career and others. And so I would definitely say if you don't have a sponsor, please seek one out within your organization. I think it will really help you as you navigate your career. And again, having a mentor is everything. They can tell you about the things that maybe were difficult in their career and what were some of the things that maybe you might want to do differently just to save you some time. And that will help you catapult that much quicker than maybe they did.
And Maria, so you're in AI. It's an ever-evolving, day-to-day, growing industry. There's so many challenges, so many opportunities. You're working for, one of the leading companies, Microsoft. Tell us about how you focus on investing in yourself professionally. How do you continue your education?
Got it. Well, I personally like to attend courses rather than read. I do a lot of reading, but going to classes and either outside of Microsoft through schools or within Microsoft and with colleagues that are specifically in NI. So that's what I personally do to keep myself up to speed. Yeah.
And then how about the work-life balance? How do each of you really keep it in check? Because you could so easily spend so much time focusing on your job. How do you make sure you just kind of take a step back and make sure everything's balanced?
So having this type of job is very demanding. So what I found is flexibility matters. So having the flexibility to do what you need to do, it doesn't matter in a specific time, is key. As a matter of fact, there is research that says that women value flexibility more than anything, and when they have it, they will give you much more to their jobs. The second aspect, what I try to do is, instead of call it work-life balance, is work integration, work and life integration, and how I am able to put the two together and manage expectations with family, with my husband, with work as well, on how I integrate all together part of my life, because what I do is part of my life, and so I integrate it rather than separating it.
And Anna, you had mentioned you were reading Becoming from Michelle Obama's book, and I'm wondering how reading this book and living out how you balance everything, how is it comparing?
So politics aside, I have to say that it has been very inspirational, especially her early journey as a woman, as a minority, and as a mother even, right? And one of her priorities, even as a first lady, was always her girls, right? And I also have two girls, one 14 and another 9, and my girls are my priority. I have absolutely no second thoughts about that at any point in time. And career decisions have been based on my girls, right? So I have been offered to go and do greater, bigger things, but then that means that I'm gonna be less available, right, for my kids. So in a way, I think that as professional women that want to be out there and be independent and make decisions and change the world and do things, it's a great example because it actually teaches you that there is a way, right? You just need to make sure that you have a system. So in her case, right, she has a staff in the White House. I have my husband and my mom, so my staff, right? Some came with training, so my mom came with training, but then my husband, right? I was working late and it was shower time for the girls. I'm like, okay, put them to shower. And I'm working on my computer and he's like, what? Yeah, it's okay. You can do it. I believe in you, go. And after the second time, fine, it was possible, right? I mean, he's not a big chef, but anybody can do ramen, right? Just boil the water, put the package, and then dinner time. So it doesn't have to be perfect. It just have to be okay. And the kids are really very adaptable, right? I travel a lot because of my work. I cover Latin America, so I go to Brazil, to Colombia, to Chile, to Mexico all the time. And I live a schedule with all the activities, almost like a COO to the president, right? Okay, so I do that for my husband and my mom, and then I forget that they are there, and I just do my job and concentrate and meet with my clients because I know that I have this system. So I think that being Latinas give us the advantage of having family on top of us, which sometimes is like too much, but the reality is that without that multi-generational system of people helping you, call it an aunt, a grandmother, a mother, is hard. It's very, very hard. You can always hire someone to do it, but culturally, for me, there's nothing like my mom or my dad or my husband to take care of my kids, right? So, and I tell my kids, have kids. I will take care of them. Just have them, because it's important, right? So spread the word. Have them have kids.
And this brings me to my next question. When we're working in corporate America, it's very systematic, cultural. Each company has its own culture. We navigate through as professionals in the different positions that we have there. But there are times that one side of our brain is telling us to behave and act and expedite in one way, but then there's the Latina side of our brain that goes into play. Tell me how you balance that when they're in conflict. Or are they?
It's an interesting question. Maybe I'll have Monica start, so maybe she inspires me.
Well, I think it's a controversial question to a certain degree, and the reason for that is that corporate America, we all come from different backgrounds and different places, and of course we're very grateful, all of us in this room, to work for companies that are part of the HACR membership. And earlier we talked about the supplier diversity, and pretty much every company in this room is held to a certain set of standards. But as part of the standards and part of being corporate America, there is kind of the norm. And I think we as Latinas, we as just men and women who maybe come from different places, we're very cautious. We're very cautious as we're moving up the ladder, because you don't know what you don't know. And in some cases, our differences, at least not at the beginning, until some of these diversity programs start really getting to work, we're not sure how someone might take us. And so I think for a lot of us, we've approached it cautiously. Sometimes we may find somebody at work who is another Latina, and you may sneak over to the vending machine and have a conversation and say, do you know what just happened? And you find some comfort in there. But because there's so many political landmines, and if you're trying to navigate your corporate career, I think for some of us, until we get firmly planted in the ground and we're a little bit higher in our position and we have found our voice, I think for some of us it's a little bit scary. And for some of us, it's because we've seen other people and we've seen them, what has happened to them. It's changing, and that's the good news, but it's not changing to the extent where, at least at the beginning, some of us are just, straight out of the gate, just expressing ourselves. Because I still have seen some people that do that, and they don't stay very long. They're found as a troublemaker. They're considered someone that's, maybe too vocal. So I think through the employee network groups that a lot of these companies have, I think people can find their voice and they can have conversations in a safe place. And that's why I think that it's so important that companies have these employee resource groups so that they can have these conversations. And they can also get advice and counsel. Because I've been in conversations with some people and they said, well, if they don't give me this promotion, I'm going to leave. Well, why would they give you that promotion if you haven't proven yourself? Oh, good point. Nobody ever mentioned that to me. Well, it's also now they're not in a conversation they were going to have with their boss or somebody else. So again, I think there's a lot of different pieces to it, but I think it's still an environment where you can't always just bring the full Latina and the culture with you without feeling that there is some hesitance.
Thank you for answering that tough question. It is a tough question, but it is a reality for many of us. And I really think you did such a wonderful job answering that question. So I really want to give you a round of applause to that, because it's a tough question. We are now going to open it up to Q&A, but I just wanted to give you one last opportunity to say something, if it's on your mind, something you've thought about through this panel discussion that you might want to share with the audience.
Sure. So what I would like is to share 5 tips that have helped me through my career. One is know where you want to be and define that 3 years from now, 5 years from now, and just go and work to get it. The second one that has also helped me is be an energy pump, not an energy sump. And people love to be around people that are that have energy. The other one is be passionate about what you want to do and do it with all your heart. Be credible. I think that's extremely important when do what you're going to say, do what you say you're going to do, and then that will earn credibility and it will allow you to deliver results. And the last one is have fun. At the end of the day, all said and done, the journey is the reward. Is going through that, learning, reflecting, and being and helping others succeed.
I guess that in my case, and I think this is applicable really to anybody, but mostly to women because of how we've been raised not to take risk, right? In the park, we need to be nice and not break our bonds, while boys are breaking their bonds but learning, right? We don't take risk. So I think it's important to break stereotypes and not be afraid. So if you hear of a position that is available, or if you want to get to a certain place at a certain point, raise your hand, put it out there. The worst case scenario is nothing happened, right? So in the past, I think even for myself, like I would be quiet waiting for things to happen, or would assume, oh, I'm not gonna raise my hands because I know that they're thinking about this. Well, you don't know really, that's all in our heads. So take the risk, go for it. It's okay to make mistakes. Nobody's going to point out at you with a finger saying you made a mistake. On the contrary, raise your hand and say, you know what, this is what I learned from my mistake, and then you become more experienced, right, to be able to share more knowledge. So take risk, it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And to add to that, I mean, perseverance, hard work, continual learning, all those things are so very important. I want to just take a quick second to address the fact that some of you are here in this room thinking, okay, well, what's the secret sauce? How do you get to where you need to be? How do you escalate to a higher place? As we sit here in 2019, there's still a ways to go, but I think that there's 3 things that we need to be thinking about. One is we need to be grateful for HACR. Give a round up to HACR and Sid Wilson and his team. We need to be grateful that HACR exists, as well as many other organizations that help us. It's the whole idea is the glass half full, half empty. 30 years ago, the Latina women who are up here, even in corporate America as we know it, they weren't there. And we have slowly been building on the foundation that others have built for us. And so I know the next 20 to 30 years, we're gonna see even more changes. So it starts with a little bit of gratitude and knowing that there's other people who are here to support us. The second thing is, obviously there's programs that are out there. Take advantage of them. Learn as much as you possibly can. Be the most prepared at the table so that when the opportunity comes, you're creating your own luck. And then the third, don't count on somebody else to always do all the work. Sometimes we want to come in a room and we say, what are you going to do for me? What are these people going to do for me? Well, sometimes we've been given gifts and we don't even know that they are gifts. But we can get a gift sometimes just by actually giving to somebody else. And we need to pull up the next generation. So if you've reached a certain level of success by virtue of coming to programs like this, through your company helping you and mentoring you, give to somebody else. I mentor 8 young ladies, and they're all doing extremely well. And I know that probably in the next 20 years, they're probably going to surpass me. And that's good, because that means that I did a good job. So if you see somebody that needs help, somebody asks for your business card, give them your business card. And if you don't have it, keep one and have them take a picture. We're all here to help one another, and there's enough slice of the pie for every single one of us. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you all for sharing your very important insights. I think they're extremely meaningful, and I thank you for your resilience and for standing up and for really taking your careers to the next level and trying to balance it all at the same time. And I really look forward to having a café con leche with all three of you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.